What, this tablet? It's mine. Mine.
It's yours, isn't it?
Yeah. Let's just get this one going, and then we should.
There's a red light on that one, but not the other one.
Yeah. Right. Well, okay, Dad, when you're ready, I suppose. So what's today's date?
Okay, I was born, start again.
Right, go on.
Today is Thursday, November the 14th, 2019. I was born in Gloucester on the 15th of August 1928.
Okay, so that's when you were born, Dad.
Yeah.
So where were you born?
I was born in Gloucester, it's 37 Sydney Street, on the 15th of August 28. I had, so go on.
Yeah, okay, but so that was you. So you were born at home then? Was that?
Oh, I
was
think
that?
so, I don't
Yeah,
know.
as far as you know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your mum and dad then.
Yeah, okay. I had two sisters, Gwen and Elsie, and a brother Bill, who were all a few years older than I was. My mother, Beatrice, and my dad, Charlie, and my mum's grandfather was still alive. He was William, and I remember him until he died when he was about in his early 83 or something like that, and I was about 4 or 5. I remember one or two faint remembrances of him was he used to take me round Gloucester Market and for me to see all the cows and the pigs and the animals there. In those days, cattle were driven through Gloucester, the main streets, to the cattle market. And quite a lot of ladies used to run into shops when they went past. I never knew my...
This is straight to the middle of town then,
yeah.
the cows went, yeah, okay.
Through Eastgate Street, yeah.
Yeah.
I never knew my mum's mother, but she died, and she had several, well, quite a number of children. I only remember a few of them, namely my mother, of course, Beatrice, and my Auntie Elsie, and Auntie Doris, and Uncle Fred. I think there were a couple of more sisters. One had fits and the other died young. And there was also a couple of more sons. There was Jim, who was a bit of a comedian, and he used to go on the stage now and again. They called him Gloucester's rising comedian, but I didn't think he rose too long because he died quite young. And then there was another uncle called Bert. Uncle Fred worked for Holland and Wolff, and he was an engineer, and he moved to Nottingham soon after the war, I suppose, and then he was moved to Lincoln, and he came back to Nottingham in the early 30s. He had a son, Alec, and a daughter, Marie.
And Dad, so just interesting,
Yeah,
so
sure.
So Fred moved away, but the rest of the family would. Seems that when we moved to Gloucester when we moved from Gloucester in 1968 to Bedford, that was a big thing in the family, because as far as I was concerned, everyone had lived in Gloucester forever. So Fred was just the one exception.
It was a great exception, that was. But Auntie Doss had two sons, Eric and Gordon, and a daughter, Jean. Auntie Elsie had two sons, Reg and Bernard. Bernard was a lovely chap. He played the piano very well, and he was quite good looking, I think. But unfortunately he died with a stomach problem in hospital when he was in his mid-20s. of course, Uncle Reg carried on, and he played the violin. I grew up in Gloucester, went to Derby Road Infant School when I was 4. I don't think I thought too much of that, but I did.
So just before we get on to the schools though, Dan, I'll
Yeah.
just have a concentrate on your early life for a while. So, yeah, because we knew, I mean, obviously we knew Reg,
Yeah.
we used to call him Rich Uncle Reg or whatever.
Yeah.
He had a garage later in life and so on. But on your dad's side, I think you said you didn't have much to do with your dad's...
We didn't have much to do with my dad's relations, because I think his parents died when they were quite young, and his father was reputed to be a drunken sot. And the story is he tried to sell my father when he was born for a pint of beer. Whether that's right or not, I don't know. He had my dad had a sister called Violet, who had 2 daughters, Grace and Molly. But we didn't have a lot to do with those because they were very strict Plymouth Brethren, and
Plymouth Brethren, yeah.
Plymouth Brethren,
Some sort of religious sect then, yeah.
We didn't really get on with them at all.
And your dad never drank alcohol, did he?
He never
Because
drank
as a
alcohol
sort
in
of
his life. When he's still going. When he was in the
Yeah.
Great War, they all had a little tot of brandy issue, but he always gave his to someone else because he, all the stories about his father, he just didn't touch alcohol ever. Shall I go about my early schools now?
No, not yet. So let's just talk a little bit then. So, so in Sydney Street. So you're in 37. Tell us a bit more about Auntie Elsie and Auntie Gwen, because I think Auntie Gwen was about 18 when you were born,
Auntie
wasn't
Gwen was
she?
about 17 or 18 when I was
Yeah.
born. Auntie Elsie was about 14, and I think Bill was about 10 or something like that. So it was a very late arrival. And Auntie Elsie and Auntie Gwen both worked at the Gloucester shirt factory making shirts. And Brother Bill, he was apprentice carpenter at GWR, and he came
That's
out
Great
of
Western Railways,
Great
isn't
Western
it?
Railway, yeah.
Yeah.
And what else happened then?
So what about life in? So you were brought up in 37 Sydney Street then. So that was like a terrace in a terrace, wasn't it? Sydney Street.
Terrace, typical Victorian type terrace street, with a small back garden. A small front garden, not a bad back garden, but outside loo and all that sort of stuff. But anyway,
No bath,
no
or anything
bathroom,
like that.
no bathroom. No,
Yeah.
no.
So was that tin bath then once a
Yeah,
week? Was it?
we had a tin bath once a week, which you put the buckets of water on the gas stove and heat them up and have a bath in the front room, which was the parlour, which was called the lounge these days.
But you probably didn't use them, did you? That's probably all you used it for, wasn't it? Because it was. I always remember when I was a kid, because Auntie Elsie still lived there.
Yeah,
Auntie
it was
Gwen.
hanging up on a wall outside
Yeah.
the back door.
But they weren't big houses. They weren't small houses. They
yeah,
weren't big
small,
houses.
but
But
they
the
weren't
front
big.
rooms never got used, did
Very
they?
involved. Front rooms were used at Christmas, when big event, a fire was put in the grate there, and because there's no central heating in those days. You went to bed with hot water bowl. But anyway, that's sort of my early day recollections.
You played in the street. Were there many cars in
Oh
the street
yeah,
in those days?
at the early 30s that was, when I was about, until the middle 30s, when I was about 7 or 8. Played marbles in the streets, bowling hoops along, whip top, and of course those days there was a lot of horse transport. We had a pony and milk trap come round to deliver the milk, and the bin men were in the bins were with great big Shire horses pulling them along. Of course there was some manure so often we used to go out with a bucket and put it on the rhubarb. But all that went in the gutter, and we played marbles in the gutter and God knows what, so it would be frowned on these days, I know, but didn't do us any harm.
Yeah.
And then when I was...
Did you have a pet? Do you have any pets?
I had a pet dog given to me as a Christmas present when I was about 7, I suppose. His name was Duke. He was a mongrel. Of course, you could get a dog for about a 5 bob those days. Never had any vet fees or anything like that, or inoculations. And of course, in those days, dogs used to go around in packs, about 10 or 12 dogs, roaming around the streets and God knows what. And of course, Duke, he used to run up the back garden path and jump quite a high back gate and join the throng of dogs. And eventually they started chasing sheep. So the farmer came round and found out where this Duke lived, and he said, if he comes around again, I shall shoot him. So my mum didn't want that, so she took him to the vets, and that was the end of Duke. I suppose he was about 4 or 5 then.
Yeah.
But anyway, I left the Derby Road Infant School and went to Widden Street Junior Mixed School, which had pupils from about 7 or 8 until 11. And I was there 3 years. And, I did my basic education there.
Did you like school at that time?
I liked school by then, yeah. Because there was all sorts of appetising things going on. The teacher in the middle school, the middle class we went to, we had a great big tank of goldfish in the classroom, and he used to get one of the boys to clean the tank out by sucking on a tube and spitting the water into a bucket, and he clipped on the bucket and they refilled the tank and the goldfish went off again. But that was Mr. Cook. Mr. Gaze was at the my last year there, and it was great there because he had a cine camera, one of those very ancient ones, and he used to go to Africa every summer 4-week term, because there were only 4 weeks in those days, and he used to film lots of things in Africa, and he used to show them on his cine camera with all the curtains drawn in the room. And because we laughed sometimes because he took some pictures of African ladies without any tops on. So that was a bit of a laugh.
That must have been pretty exotic in those days.
God,
That's something very rare for someone to do that.
Yeah. And I remember when I was about 5, I suppose, I was sitting in the loo, and all of a sudden a German bomber went overhead.
So the war broke out.
Sorry, come back. It was a Zeppelin an airship went past, and that was about 1936, I suppose.
And these were British airships, were they, at the time?
Oh, well, I suppose so.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
It was an
not
airship.
Zeppelins, yeah.
And
this is well before the war.
it
then.
will, about 36, 37. Anyway, I was at Widden Street Junior Mixed School until I was just 11 in the August.
And can I ask you a question then, Dad?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
so it was a mixed school, but did you actually really mix with the girls? Because I've
Oh,
heard
and the
stories about having separate playgrounds
the
and
girls
things like
and
that.
the boys were in the same class.
Yeah.
And I remember one kid, I don't remember his name, Mickey Wilkes. He went into the girls' toilets, and he was admonished. And he came out and he had a beating in front of the whole school. Yeah. Funny old things those days.
So, but also at the same time, I guess part of your life was the Good Shepherd Church, which was at the end of Sydney Street, where everyone went, I guess. Yeah.
All my family went to the Good Shepherd Church, by which time Gwen had met Lewis, and Elsie had met Bernard, and then Bill had met Vera. And I joined the choir when I was about 8 with a stiff white collar and a black tie, and of course Bill was in the choir. He had quite a nice tenor voice, and Bernard was in the choir. He had a good bass voice, but Lewis had an indifferent voice, I think. But anyway, we were all
in the choir
then. And
Uncle Bernard was very musical, wasn't he? I remember he could play the piano and the violin and so on. Uncle Bernard.
Oh yes, he could play the violin. He made a noise out of everything. He played a tune on a blown-up balloon, you know. Just a bit recognise it, but anyway, we went on.
And I guess church was what, every Sunday, couple of times a day or whatever.
Well, it was Sunday morning communion service and Sunday afternoon and then Sunday evensong, and we had choir practice 2 evenings a week, so it was a bit a lot. We used to go on a choir outing once a year by train to Weston-super-Mare, and yeah, that's quite fun. That was,
and so just on that then, because you mentioned they're going, you went on outings. What about holidays then? When you were small?
Holidays.
You ever go on holiday?
It was only day trips. We went on day trips to a place called Bakersfield, which was near Cheltenham. They had a few slides and swings, but my family we went on some day trips to Barry Island and
Barry Island's in Cardiff, isn't it? Yeah,
near Cardiff. Yeah. And then the only holiday I remember that we all went on was we went down to Barry Island for a week. My father didn't come because he didn't like going away, so he was quite happy to stay at home. But I went down with Granny and Lewis, Elsie and Bernard, Bill and Vera, I think, and myself. We went down for a week, and you used to have bed and breakfast there, and used to take your own joint of meat, and she'd cook it for you, your main meal, the landlady. I remember when we came back from there, I had a stick of rock, and we were on the train, and Uncle Bernard sat opposite me. He chucked that thing out the window, that's rock. I chucked it out the window. And then I wanted it back, so I wasn't very happy about that. Anyway, that was one of the things.
And what did your dad do for a
his
living?
Living, he was apprenticed to be in a foundry worker, and then of course he went into the Great War, and he was actually buried under a shell burst. It's just his hand sticking out from this mound of earth, and some Thomas came along and pulled him out, but he was the only one that was survived. So
he saw action then.
He saw action. Yes, he was the Royal Engineers then it was, and he was with.
And then when he came back from the war,
he had a great portrait of himself in what we called our kitchen, not the back kitchen, the kitchen which was our living room, of him in his military uniform with peak cap and waxed moustache and puttees, and with his swagger stick, I don't know what happened to that, or we'd like to have had that, but it went years ago. Yeah.
And then after the war, then what did he?
He was
quite hard.
Just before the war, things, jobs were very hard to get, and people were getting sacked all left, right, and centre. His only source of living was to go around on a bicycle with a big pannier on the front full of books, and he used to go around all the villages round about Gloucester. People would pay penny for a book, and you go back the next week and they change it and all that sort of stuff. I know in our shed at Sydney Street, you had a whole mass of books.
It was like a private library then,
It was, yeah. But of course, when the war started, that finished. I remember I used to go round him now and again on my bicycle, which was a Coventry Eagle. Bought when I was about 10, I suppose, something like that. No, before that, when I was about 8. And one village we used to go was Church, and we used to cut across there to Hucklecote, where the Gloucester Aircraft Company was. And we could go down, he used to take me down the side road, and we watched the Gloucester Gladiators being test flighted, which was quite interesting. Yeah. And then, of course, the war started, and he gave that up, and he got a job not a bad job with the post office. But when I probably left.
Just talk about school then. I just want to finish with that in a minute. But just before that, so just want to get in my own mind. So the family lived in Sydney Street, and like Auntie Elsie lived there until quite late in life, until Bernard and Lewis died. So you lived in. Your mum and dad lived in 37. Was that rented at the time?
That was rented, yeah. And Gwen and Lewis, they were married just before the war, and they had a flat in Clement Street, which is down Barton Street, lower end of town. for some time, and then Elsie and Bernard, they got married just after the war started. Bernard was a butcher, and they managed to get this rented house, number 41. So they lived there until Bernard was called up for the RAF in, well, I think they were married in 1940. It must have been late 40. He was called up for the Air Force, and then Gwen, when he was called up, Auntie Elsie was by herself in their house. So Gwen and Lewis packed their flat up and went to live with, three of them together in Auntie Elsie's.
And that was,
So
and that was
in
where?
47. That must have been.
41 was it, or 40?
Elsie was married in Bernard in 1940.
Yeah.
Auntie Gwen was in August Bank Holiday 39, which just before the war started.
Yeah.
And they went into 41 and
41 Sydney Street.
41
Yeah.
Sydney Street.
Yeah.
Bernard got called up, and then Auntie Lewis never went in the forces because he was what was called a reserve occupation. He was delivering food all over the place in the main warehouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anyway, those three lived in there until Bernard got demobbed. And I'm getting a bit disjointed now. But
It's okay. But in the end, just to wrap this one up then, so ultimately then Auntie Elsie and Uncle Ben, they bought 35, didn't they? So
no, they bought. They bought 35. Yeah.
And Auntie Gwen and Auntie Elsie lived next door to each other then for
for some
all
years.
their life, or right
until
into their
until their
60s.
husbands
Yeah.
died,
Okay.
because there's a couple called Reynolds lived next door, 35 to us in 37, and she died, and then much later he died, and that's when they bought the house from the daughter, who she was called Doris, but she lived in Bristol.
Okay.
And I told you about Bill and Mary being Bill and Vera living in Bristol, did I? Perhaps
Well,
I didn't.
no, that's because Uncle Bill, was he in the forces down there, wasn't he? Was that right?
Yeah, but he was first. He's drafted into a factory with Uncle Reg.
Yeah. Okay.
Uncle Reg was his mechanic, and they lodged in Bristol, and he used to come home weekends. I remember Bill had an old Velocette motorcycle. He used to go backwards and forwards. How they got there sometimes I don't know, but I remember Bill saying once that they were going towards Bristol, and there was a raid on Bristol, and the whole sky was lit up with flames, and God knows what in Bristol. But as I said, Bill got called up, and Reg came back to Gloucester, and that was it. Because Bill and Vera, they lived in Bristol, you see.
That was after the war, was it?
That was
you married after.
Jordan. Bill was married in about 1941, 42,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And they lived in Bristol to the end of the war.
Yeah.
When they wanted to come back to Gloucester, and Uncle Lewis's mother kept a shop in Westcott Street, which was down by the Severn. His father died when he apparently was quite young, but he used to keep the shorter shop, and his mother did. And then his mother died. His father. I'm getting mixed up now. And Bill and Mary got fed up with Bristol, so they came back and they lived in a flat with Lewis's mother, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when Lewis's mother died, they had to go out and they got a flat in Clement Street. But Vera was in very, very poor health. She had a terribly bad heart, and she had several operations at Frenchay in Bristol. And then when they were in Blenheim Road, the flat was the same road that Big Auntie Elsie lived.
Yeah.
She died. So
And she was what, in her 30s then, I guess, was she? Something like that,
30s, I
yeah.
suppose, yeah.
This was what, in
Bill was
late
abs-
40s, early 50s?
No. Bill was in his mid-30s.
Right.
And of course he was distraught, and he came to live then with Elsie and Bernard in their house 41.
Yeah. Okay.
But going back a bit, when I left the junior school.
Just want to ask you a specific question, because this is quite a big thing for, I think, Dad, because you actually passed at the end of junior school. You took what I knew as the 11 plus. I don't know if it was called that then. Was it called the 11 plus?
It was.
So you took that and you passed it. Yeah.
No, it wasn't called the M plus. It was. What was it called? Oh, some.
Go on. Yeah.
Well, certificate or something. Yeah. I forget what it was called. It was 11 plus, you know. And I got accepted at Sir Thomas Rich's School in Gloucester.
Which is one of the elite schools, wasn't it? Yeah.
Two of the elite grammar schools
Yeah.
for boys, and they had 2 elite schools for girls, grammar school.
So we'll probably talk about that in the next session, Dad, actually, that. But just how was that, what sort of impact did that have in the family? I guess that was...
Oh, yeah, great, because Uncle Bill wasn't much of a scholar. And I don't think... Elsie wasn't bad.
Elsie was... Yeah, Auntie
she was
quite
clever, but
yeah.
they never got to grammar school standard.
Yeah.
And going to... Tommy Rich's was an old Bluecoat school founded in 1666, so it had quite a long reputation. Now, do you want to do anything?
We'll talk about the school next time, actually, because I'm conscious of that. But that, so I guess your dad was really made up with that.
Oh God, he was. Yeah. Oh, he was over the moon about that. Yeah, he was well educated. He was. He went to a school where you paid a penny a week.
Right.
You know, otherwise you went for nothing. But it was a higher class school, and he was good.
Good, excellent. So I just want to finish this off, because you told me a story the other day that I thought was quite interesting and good to share, which was about the annual outing of the disabled people. That So just tell us a little about that to wrap up this time.
In Gloucester, every August time, they had what they called was the Cripples outing. Now all the cripples in this district used to assemble, and they got onto a number of floats and lorries and God knows what, and they were paraded through the town, people watching and cheering. And I remember one poor old, was it a man? He was in like a big shopping basket. He could look over the edge, and then they were carted right through the town to the station. And they were taken down to Weston-super-Mare for a day, and that was their annual holiday. But oh dear, I don't know.
Wouldn't get it today, but that was just as it was at the time, I guess. So,
yeah. It was an eye-opener for me when I went to Thomas, because all the masters wore gowns, and you know, there's a separate study for the headmaster and all that sort of business. And all the wives were very smart ladies, you know.
Okay. So what we'll do next time then, we'll talk about your school days and that, and also of course the war was then coming. So what your consciousness of that, and I know you got some interesting stories about seeing things and bombings and so on. But we'll do that next.
Do you want to go on now?
No, we'll do it next time, because I'll just stop the camera now. That's all. So make sure it's
all right.
Okay.
Was that okay?
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, right. It's brilliant.
No, it was. No, it's absolutely absolutely fine.